I think we are live. We are now live. Yay. All
Yay.
right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining in this episode of Transition Talk. And today, along with my co-host, Pamela, we have our special guest, Joanne Marks. We are so excited to have you here with us today and to share with us. And so, Pam, is there anything else that we want to talk about a little bit before we can have Miss Joanne share a little bit about herself with everybody?
Well, Joanne is our next author in the Book Society, which we are so appreciative of, not only the book, but the opportunity to talk with her. And we are going to talk more about that. And don't forget, this coming Wednesday, June the 15th, Barbara Carnes is going to be back with us live again. And we're going to be talking about her end of life series, which we've just finished up in the book club, going through and discussing those booklets that are so helpful to doulas in their practice. So that's exciting. And so Barbara's going to be joining us for a live discussion in the Book Society. So if you don't belong to the movement, we'll put that link in here shortly. You can come over and join us so that you can attend that next meeting with Joanne Carnes when with Barbara Carnes. Like that, I combined your name with Barbara's name. She would be appreciative. I don't think so. We all like our own identity. But Barbara will be joining us on Wednesday night. So that's really exciting. And that's pretty much it for the book club. We've got a lot of things coming. It's just balancing. We're so grateful. We try to balance with the authors and make sure that our time meets with what they can afford us and come visit with us. And we're lucky because Joanne was able to join us today.
Yes. Well, welcome, Joanne.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, will you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I took English and psychology in university, and I guess my first career was teaching technical writing at a local college. And I started working with women actually in 1988, and it was specifically women in grief and trauma. And I really enjoyed that, working with the women, and I just sort of started gravitating towards the grief. And so I went back to college and got my thanatology, which was very helpful. I have worked as a death doula, but I keep coming back to working with women in grief, some men, but that led to working with children in grief. And that's where I feel I found my niche. I will always work with women, but I enjoy working with children as well. They need a lot of guidance through grief.
And sometimes they get overlooked.
Mm-hmm. They are the forgotten mourners. Mm-hmm. Often if a parent dies or a sibling dies, it's the parents that get all the attention. Mm-hmm. Children they call it disenfranchised grievers. They're often overlooked by society as maybe not understanding or too young, but they know exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And they don't express their emotions as readily either. They seem to keep their emotions to themselves. I don't know, is it because they're afraid they're going to upset the adults around them, or they don't want to add to the adult trauma that's already going on? But they tend to internalize it unless we give them that opportunity to express it.
Absolutely. Kids in fact, most of the kids that the adults I interviewed for my book, I wanted to get a perspective of adults who had gone through it with no guidance. And the two things that they said stood out for them was that they did not know how to act around their parents. They wanted to protect their parents, but they didn't know if they should stay hidden, stay away, or help them, but felt like they couldn't be themselves. And they also had a big identity crisis. Now that this person is gone, how do I fit into the family? What do I do? And if they don't have an outlet for this, they start developing a lot of physical symptoms, psychosomatic illnesses, which is common along all the age groups.
Mhm. Mhm.
So they do need permission, per se, to grieve, and they also need to understand that whatever they feel is okay, because there's a lot of kids tend to take things personally, which means if I had an argument with my parent and then they died, well, they died because of me. They tend to take that on to personify the death. And they need a lot of guidance and to understand that that isn't true, that words and feelings do not have the power to kill someone.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
That was
So
one thing I think I ran across quite a bit being in the inpatient unit, is that we would have families come in with younger children and not wanting to, scare them with what was going on. And I really strongly feel like it really goes back to us as kids and how our parents perceive what's going on with the death and dying. And so I can only imagine how that shift changes and how the feelings are just all over when close, such as a sibling.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I would think that, not having ever experienced I have experienced the loss of a sibling in that I have a sister who died when she was 6 months or 3 months old, but I came after her. So I didn't really experience the physical death, but I experienced the discussion of that physical death throughout my life. And so that was something that, hearing my parents, grandparents in conversation discuss from time to time. But one of the things that I think, and I may be totally off base here, but I look back at my own childhood and growing up because of my age. I remember home vigils where families, had the funerals at home, where the body was prepared at a mortuary, but then returned to the home for the wake and the visitations. And so, because of that, death was something that early on I was taught to deal with. And I often have thought to myself, has part of our breakdown within our society and with children happened because we have become such a, for lack of a better term, outsourced sterile environment. Someone dies in the hospital, they go from the hospital directly to the mortuary. The mortuary, they're right in, generally it's got a chapel or whatever, and that's where everything takes place. So the death is really removed from the home and from the environment. And I've wondered if that has an impact on how the children of today process death.
And I believe that has a huge impact. I grew up in a family where I was protected from death. However, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew that the first case was a bird, and I knew that it wasn't coming back. My mother threw it in the garbage, like she thought she was protecting me. When my grandmother died, they didn't want to tell me. Well, I knew something was going up. I heard the talking. I heard something about grandma. And I didn't know how I was supposed to act. And actually, felt quite abandoned because am I not good enough to, as a child, our imaginations go wild, and it's far worse than if we were told the things we create in our mind. So it's so important that children be included and we talk about death with them, because it is a part of life. They are going to experience it, whether you try to protect them from it or not. They just can't be protected. Um, and actually, by including them, it gives them a chance to learn how to cope with disappointment and loss in their life. So we're actually helping them by including them. We also have to be age appropriate with them. So, if a parent, let's say a parent dies, one of my clients, one of the parents died quite violently in just a random murder.
Hmm.
You're not going to want to tell a young child the details of of how he died, but you still have to be honest that he died and it wasn't his choice. And depending on the age, when they're older, they will ask for more details as they're ready. Also, if the child is in school age, we need to keep in mind that they're going to hear things from their peers because they're going to hear it from the adults. So you have to give them enough information that they'll be prepared for what they hear in school.
Mhm.
So if we give them the information, we have control over how traumatized they're going to be because we open up their world for discussion.
Yeah.
And it's not a taboo subject.
You know, you were talking about you were protected as a so-called protected as a child. Um, Recently, and I think it was on Facebook. I can't remember where I read this, but there was a woman that was talking about the loss of her sister when she was younger, and she was the older of the pair, and the younger one had some type of cancer and was in and out of hospitals, in and out of hospitals, and eventually succumbed to the cancer. And the the sister, it was forbidden for them to talk about it. The parents didn't talk about it at home. When her sister's funeral occurred, she was not taken to the funeral. She really was never told that her sister died and what had happened. And so and whenever she would bring it up, she was scolded for ever mentioning her sister's name. And so she grew up, and as a grown woman who finally got into her early 20s, mid 20s, went on a search to find out what happened, because all these years later, she still didn't know what happened. And she talked about when she was a child that she often thought, well, her sister got sick and went to the hospital, and then she didn't come home. So if I get sick and go to the hospital, are they going to abandon me? Are they, are they going to give me away? Are they going to send me away? Because she really never understood that her sister had literally died. She thought that she had just been removed from the family because of her illnesses. And I immediately, because this was right after I had gotten your book, and I immediately thought, oh, wow. Oh, wow, she needed Joanne's book, because it was a trauma situation for her that even her family didn't know how to discuss with her, which is so sad.
It's sad, and it is common. I, my husband too was brought up the same way. You don't talk about death, and when I started talking about death in our family, he was a little bit horrified. Don't say that around our son. We may traumatize him, but the
Right.
trauma is in the not knowing, as this lady's case. I'm sure in some way she would have been emotionally stuck at that age
Uh-huh.
because of the trauma that is created.
Well, in her article, she talked about how she's had to work through it now as an adult, and that she goes regularly to the graveside and takes flowers. And this is one of the ways. The article was about how to deal with your grief over an extended period of time. And she's now much older. I think she was in her late 40s or early 50s when she wrote this article about what had happened to her. So yeah, we do have to allow children that space, but we have to teach them that space. And you're a doula, Anna's a doula, I'm a doula. We all understand this world of don't talk about death.
Yeah.
Pass it right after you. You want to clear a room socially, just say the word death, and you can just stop. I stopped a conversation this past Friday where someone very, very dear to me that I've known for probably 15 years, his mother is in the hospital, critically ill, and the likelihood is she is going to die. And I simply said to this girl, if you need to talk, I'm there. I'm willing to listen, whatever I can do to assist you. We were in a room of conversation, and I kid you not, for probably 5 to 8 minutes, there was no conversation.
Oh my,
It
yes.
just went dead silent. And then I later said to someone else that was there, I said, I was surprised at how quiet everything got after I made that. And this one individual that I was talking to actually came back and supported and said, never forget, Pam's a great ear. She's a great listener. And he's really the one that broke the silence in the room, and everybody started talking again.
It's almost like if we say the word death, it means somebody is going to die at that moment, or words do not have that type of power. If we're open about them and talk about it, like we give words power. It's us and how we're brought up. And luckily, I never bought into that hush, hush, keep death quiet. I experienced a lot of death growing up. My mother came from a massive family. And even though I wasn't necessarily supported, I was able to go to the funerals, and I learned a lot by watching other people grieve and how they grieved. And it was something that I didn't fight the process of grief. For me, it was a natural thing to do. And as a child, I listened to music, and I Never Promised You a Rose Garden was one very popular at the time. And that helped me get through it. And, at that time, I would talk to my dolls and about how I felt about my grandmother dying. And kids need an outlet. Actually, adults need an outlet as well. Everyone needs an outlet to deal with, because loss, whether it's the loss of a pet, a parent, a sibling, loss is loss. I mean, we can include divorce and like there's so many different types of losses, and they all have to be grieved. We have to acknowledge it. We cannot avoid grief, because it will stay with us. Even if we try to stuff it, it will not go away until we take the time to grieve it, to talk about it, to get through it. And to get, I think, to resolve grief, we need to come to a place where we have a new relationship with the deceased. And some people think that's like, what do you mean they're dead? How can you have a relationship? But just because people die, we don't stop loving them, and they don't have to stop being a part of our life. We can still talk to them, have reminisce about them, and that's one way of keeping them alive. I have a necklace I wear of my father's, and I feel like he's with me whenever I wear that necklace. It's got a ring of his on it, and
I so relate to that, Joanne, because I actually have my dad's Masonic ring, and he gave it to me the night before he passed. He literally took it off and handed it to me. He gave my sister his watch, and I wear that ring every day. And people will say to me often, where did you get that ring? What's that ring? And it's to me, it's a beautiful opportunity to talk about someone that was so very important in my life. And it's a continual reminder that he's not gone. He's still present.
Yes.
And the impact that he had on my life. And I think that's the other thing that we have to teach children is they're out of sight. They're not gone.
Yes. And I talk a little bit in my book about how to make a new relationship with the person. What can you do to make that new relationship happen? And it could be having objects, or even just one lady found to get over the grief of the loss of her father was to continue on with some of the sports that he loved. And he felt that actually the Toronto Blue Jays, she associates with her father, and that's something that she loves to this day, is watching baseball, and it brings her closer to her father. So it doesn't have to be an object. It can be a concept or something. Children are usually a little bit more concrete in their thinking. So like a shirt or a blanket might be more helpful. But everyone's different, and they're going to find something, or even a symbol that reminds them, a certain bird or a certain animal that will remind them of the deceased.
Well, let me ask a curiosity question. We are, of course, you're going to be our next guest author at the Book Society. And on July the 19th, you're going to join us and we're going to dive into your book. But, and not to give away too much, but if you had to pick out one gem, if you had to say, this is one of the things that really touches me in my book, is there one gem in this book that really speaks to you?
I'm going to have to say the permission and the reassurance that the kids are given that whatever they're feeling is okay and it's normal. That they're not crazy. It's okay if they're angry at the deceased. If they feel guilty for them dying, we look at that. Is it realistic that you need to feel guilty for their death? And I think those are the main things, are the permission and the reassurance.
Which is so important.
Yeah.
Such a lot to think about. So many, I know Anna she still has young children at home. You and I are on the spectrum where they have flown the nest, but Anna still has her children at home. And of course, your children are very much like mine. They're used to the subject of death, I believe, Anna.
Yeah, I mean, and we had in the last, it was a year ago, we had puppies, and three of them actually didn't make it. But one did and was with us for about 6 weeks. But through that time, she was very sick. And the puppy actually passed away while my daughter was holding the puppy. And of course, it scared her at first because she was just holding the puppy and it went limp and the head moved. So it startled her, but we talked about it. And then so she was able to realize that it was a sacred space, that she was able to hold the puppy and be with the puppy, that the puppy was being held for their final moments in life. Although we didn't, puppy actually did a little rally. And so we were like, okay, what's going on here? We knew that the time was going to eventually come sooner than any of our other dogs because of the illnesses that she had. But it was a great teaching and learning experience for all to embrace it and not to shut it down and say, oh, we're going to take this and we're just going to coddle. No, we actually sat down and had a conversation about it and discussed that, humans in the same way, and it's okay to be there and hold vigil and to be able to hold that person's hand or to hold that person as they're going. It's okay to do that. And so we've talked about her having pictures, but she's got like a little collage of pictures of things with her little dog, her little puppy. And and unfortunately, poor thing, she's lost 2 dogs in her short little span of life. Yes. So she's kind of, she had in her little head that, was every puppy I'm going to have, every dog I'm going to have, are they going to go? Well, no, but we have to look at it in a manner of such of the same thing with humans. People are here for a certain amount of time. We're not sure what that time is. We don't know what that time will be. So we have to live the best that we can, and shed light to support and love everybody, through our lifetime. So it's been, I'd say the last year has been some really big teaching moments for our family, as well as I know Miss Pam as well.
You make a very good point about, kids don't have a lot of experience with death and the big picture of life, and what you've given your daughter is very precious. That yes, you've lost 2 puppies, but usually, puppies don't die, and dogs and people live to be old, but we need to explain what old is. To a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old is really, really old, to a 15-year-old, a 30-year-old is really, really old. So what does old mean?
I'm laughing because I told you I have this span of grandchildren, and my grandson, my oldest grandson, who's 22, when he was 6 years old, I had taken him for a birthday trip to Target and pick out whatever you want. That's what I used to do with the kids. It was their special day. So anyway, he bought this really expensive set of Legos and one of these huge boxes. And he's sitting in the front seat of the car with this huge box of Legos, and we're just having this conversation. And I don't even remember what made the subject come up, but suddenly he looked at me and he goes, Nana, you're really old. And I was like taken back when he said that. I was like, oh my gosh. And I said, I'm old. Well, how old do you think I am? And he goes, you've been around since the Earth's crust was cooling and the dinosaurs were here. I look back on that and reflect on, just like you just said, that the age that children look at us and you're really old, because I guess at that very moment he saw me as being a dinosaur. But the fact was that I was old to him, and he was explaining the Legos to me. And so, and how important they were. And then that's where the conversation kind of came from. But it was so funny because children do look at us and see us not as grown adults, and where they will be someday. I mean, I guess we can all relate to when we were in our 20s, and it was like, don't trust anybody over 40. And now my best friends are in their 40s, and then it was always don't this, don't that. So we learn as we age. And of course, children have not been given that opportunity. They're on their path to learning, and we have to guide them in that learning process. And teaching them about death is part of where we really need to educate them, especially, sadly to say, in the times that we live in, with all the loss of children, period, with the loss of children through violence. I think it's real important that we bring the conversation of, and Anna hears me say this all the time, I'm like influenced by Disney, but the circle of life, because it is a circle of life, and to introduce kids to this and make them aware. I even think with books like your book, Out of the Storm, I think to educate children on the books before they're needed.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
this conversation, let's just talk about if you lost your brother or sister, or if you were, let's play the hypothesis game. What if?
Yes.
Because that, I believe, helps to educate children, rather than we have to explain to you that, and then to have that difficult conversation. And now they have to wrap their heads around it while everybody else is grieving, instead of equipping them with the tools to know how to grieve when the time comes.
Yes, and play is a great way to teach children as well, because they do a lot of processing through play, whether they're grieving or learning. They do a lot of learning through play. So that is so important, that they not be afraid, because you're right, have been so many killings in the US of children. Canada, we're starting to copycat, unfortunately, that part. Not as much yet, but it's just a matter of time before it comes here. And it's a sad part of life, but it's one that is a part of life. So equipping our children with how to cope and what to do is very important. And they don't have to be afraid day by day if they're confident that they can handle it.
And I think that education begins at home.
Yes.
It's so important that they're educated, taught that in the home, especially today. We can try to shield our kids from the traumas that are going on, but they hear it, they see it, they're aware of it. And so they need to learn to express it, talk about it, and understand it.
Yes.
Man, this has been a heavy conversation.
Yes. I'm so looking forward to seeing you with our book club discussion, and getting to chat some more and share with everybody, because I think this is definitely a conversation that could carry on for much, much longer. And I really hope that I did put the link in to go and check out your wonderful book that we'll be talking about in the Book Society in the Movement app. And so we're just really, really grateful and thankful that you were able to join in with us today and share with
It's been a
this topic
pleasure.
with us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's so excited to know you'll be back again on July the 19th.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. So, all right, everyone. Well, we are going to wind down for today for this week's episode. And I want to thank everybody for joining in. And we did have some guests coming in, and, we had some beautiful comments left. We need all of us. We need to show how to communicate about death. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And Deidre said, beautiful book. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And so thank you all for joining in. And we look forward to seeing everyone next week when Pam and I will join in together. We're actually going to be talking about the gray tsunami,
Yes.
and the needs for doulas are so greatly needed. And so there is just a whirlwind wide range of things that doulas can be so helpful to in the community of which we all live in. So we will see everyone next week, Monday, same time, and look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you again, Joanne, for joining us, being here with us today.
Thank you. Great. See you
I
soon.
appreciate you having me. Yep. I'll see you soon.